Hello and welcome to this episode of Journey to a Dream, brought to you by Kawasaki Insurance. So lovely to have your company. If it's your first time, do check out some of our other episodes. This podcast is all about talking to people who are passionate about motorsport. Many of them have raced over here on the Isle of Man, or maybe they're involved behind the scenes, but actually sometimes they are hoping to come over here at some point. The Isle of Man is just such a draw for so many people, so it's brilliant to talk to everybody wherever they are on their journey. And for today's guest, I just want to say thank you very much to a previous guest, Damien Horan, for putting me in touch. Stephen Walsh came over here for the first time a couple of years ago. It's not been an easy journey so far, but we'll hear a little bit more about that. And also, he has a fascinating day job as well. Let's hear from him now.
So I'm Stephen Walsh. I work in Manchester Metropolitan University. I'm a lecturer in psychology there. Bike-wise, I've been mad about them all my life, really, especially the classic bikes. And in terms of racing, for me, it's always been kind of pointing towards the Isle of Man. I've always been a fanatic, really, about the Isle of Man. I just love the place.
Stephen, we talk to so many people who don't live over here who say exactly what you do. There is just a real draw that the Isle of Man has. Would you be able to maybe try and decipher that for us from your point of view? Where did that come from?
Oh, a neighbour of mine when I was a kid, got that old V for Victory video that Joey Dunlop did, and we gave hours watching it. And then there was a guy who lived close to us who was a hero of all of us when I was a kid. Eric Galbraith was his name, and he used to race there. And it just, from the very first peak I had it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen.
Do you remember your first time over here on the Isle of Man?
Yeah, it was 2000. I went over for the Manx Grand Prix. Seamus Green won the newcomers that year. I stayed in Uncan. And then, it was 2001. But they did the big Joy Dunlop thing then afterwards up around the mountain, went up the veranda to watch that. It was great. And it was funny because it was because I'd spent so much time looking at the place in videos and any which way we could get to look at it. It was a bit like, if you go on holiday to, I don't know, maybe New York, and you feel like you've been there before because you've seen it on the telly. Going to the Isle of Man was a little bit like that for me.
Do you know, that's the thing? So many people, before they come over here, watch so many onboards that actually they know certainly the mountain course probably better than most of us who live here.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? And my wife thinks I'm a kind of a sado, but starting about now, I've started to think about the Manx Grand Prix this year, and I try and watch an onboard every day, and then I go to bed and I do a lap with my head, my hands and feet and everything be moving when I'm in the bed. But yeah, it's just great. And
possibly annoying as well, Stephen. But in terms of you and this passion for bikes then, at what point did you actually start riding a bike, thinking about it competitively?
When I was 5, I got a little Technomotive 50. My dad was into trials and he followed racing. He didn't race, but he followed racing. And I got a little trials bike when I was 5, Technomotive 50. Then I changed that to a TY 80 when I was about 8. And then I got a TY 175. So I was doing trials up until I was about 14. And then I wanted to go racing motocross, and Dad wasn't keen on me going racing at that stage, so he pulled the plug. And then when I was 18, I kept trying to, bit of part-time jobs getting bikes, and then I got a TZ350 when I was 18, and I raced it for a little while, and then I crashed it when the parents were on holidays and I wasn't supposed to be racing, so there was trouble over that. And then that was the end of the bikes for a while, and in terms of racing, but I'd rode bikes always.
Oh, Stephen, I'm just getting chills at the thought of your parents coming back from holiday and having to have that conversation. What do you remember about it?
Oh, well, there was war because they were in the Aran Islands. I rode the bike over to Mondello to run it in. I built the engine myself at home, and I didn't do a very good job building the engine. And I knocked myself out when I fell off it, and I wasn't really right for a couple of days. So they came back, and I wasn't really right. And yes, there was a lot of trouble after it.
But it didn't put you off, though, did it?
No. Well, it did mean that I didn't have any money or support from home really after that. But it took me a while to get. So I was straight back onto a road bike. But it took me the best part of 10 years until I had the money to get back onto a racing bike. And then I didn't really have the money. I was working in the factory at the time because I came to the psychology came much later. But I was working in the factory, and I had a CBR 600 that I used to use for my main transport. And then I put race fairings on it at the weekend and go racing on it. But I fell off it and wrecked it as well. So that was the end of that until a couple of years ago when I got going on the classics again.
And Stephen, people who aren't in this world, or really who don't understand the passion, they might enjoy watching bikes. They can't necessarily really, and maybe I'm speaking for myself here, but when you hurt yourself, like it sounds pretty badly, when you're throwing every bit of money that you've got at it and it still doesn't seem to be going in the right direction, what is it that keeps you coming back?
Oh, it's just the best fun you can have, bar nothing. It's just awesome. It's just great. I'm not especially good at it, but I just love it. It's just, yeah, it's just great. It's like being in a perfect world where there are no police and cars coming the other direction. It's just awesome.
So you mentioned your real love of the classic machines then. How has that developed? And in terms of racing, what have you done?
Before COVID, I bought a Crash K4 Honda because I wanted to go racing again, and I'd always liked the classics, and I kind of needed to do it on the cheap. So I bought CB350. There was just the back end of it. I got it for about 800 quid, and I just stripped her, put her back together standard. I did the first year on it with the bike completely standard, and it only cost me maybe 12 or 1,300 pounds to get it together, and I had really good fun with it. And then after that, it started. Well, I did the engine, and George Stinson and Sandy Brown and Armagh gave me a hand, and we got the bike going better and faster and faster, and it started coming up through the things. And we took it to the Manx Grand Prix in 2023, had a good run at it. And then Jeff Smith from Cleethorpes had a CB450, so he gave me a lend of that. Ron Rowe rebuilt the engine on it for me. So I've had the two of them now for the last couple of years, my own CB350 and Jeff's 500 Honda.
And Stephen, when you've dreamt about something for such a long time and you've come from a place which I think is fair to say really the home of road racing, when you think about the likes of the people who've come out of there, what was it like for you sitting on that start line on Glencrutchery Road for the first time?
It was like all Christmases come together, but it was kind of funny because years ago, you probably remember from the onboard yourself, or from the videos yourself, the old Duke videos. But I remember watching Robert Dunlop going through Kirkmichael and thinking, I've got to do that someday. And then my first lap, I have no recollection at all of going through Kirkmichael. I couldn't believe it. But my first spin around the island on my newcomers lap, John McGuinness took us on the newcomers lap, and going over Ballath Bridge, a wire fell off the coil, and I had to pull in at Ballath, so I didn't get my newcomers done, and it kind of threw me back. The organisers were really good to me, and Milky was really a massive help. They got me out on the Wednesday night, but I missed quite a lot. But yeah, that's the way.
And that's the thing, isn't it? It's just all that anticipation. And then when you're suddenly there, I wonder how much you actually, as a racer, can see at all, because you're just so focused, I guess, on the next thing, and maybe thinking one step ahead, having done all those onboards and know what's coming.
It's funny, I think it looks quicker off the bike. Well, I know our old bikes aren't that quick anyway, but I think it looks quicker off the bikes than it does on it.
I'll take your word for that one.
I wish I was seeing it a bit quicker.
So MGP 2023, then obviously it didn't go to plan to start off with, but as an experience overall, how did you rate it?
Great. It left me really wanting more because I didn't get out until the Wednesday night, and then I got the bike qualified. Then I blew up an engine at Crosby, and we went back and we changed the engine, but there was we had to change the engine in a hurry, and on race day there was still oil in the exhaust that hadn't burnt off, so I never got out. I was in the start line, but the officials thought the bike was too smoky, so I didn't get to start. So back again last year.
How do you deal with a disappointment like that?
Not very well. Oh gosh, I wasn't happy. I couldn't even watch the race. I went up Duncan and looked. I had an ice cream. I was very, very, very disappointed. But hey, so we went back last year and tried again, and we'll keep going back.
And how was last year then? Obviously the weather aside, which didn't play for anybody really, did it?
Yeah, well, last year made me even more determined because I went back last year and I was so looking forward to it. I had the two bikes, they were going great. They were both on it. They had in the first practice, I had the 500 out for the first practice, and one of the exhausts came loose up top of the mountain, so I had to pull in, get her going, got it back down, changed onto the 350, went out. So I was getting my laps in, and then the 500, the front yokes, there was a crack in it, so we had to change that. I ended up getting the first couple of laps in the 350, and then when I got back in the 500 in practice, I got a puncture going into Parliament Square, and it was one of those ones. I tipped in. I was on a fella's wheel. I had a notion to get him up May Hill, and I was sitting on my behind. I was thinking, how did that happen? And the marshals picked the bike up. I had a puncture in the back tire, so we took the bike back, got it fixed. But then when they combined the races, I had a notion I would have liked to gone out in the 350, but with the races combined, they wanted us in the 500, and I wasn't just sure of it. And when we got started, a little circlip had shifted on the selector shaft, so I got first, second, third, couldn't get any more gears, so I was retired after about 2 miles. So next year, please goodness, I'll get to finish.
Oh, Stephen, that is just, tell you what, yeah. I mean, when you have to deal with a lot of stuff like that, I'm guessing maybe this is where your work might come in handy. Just tell us a little bit more specifically about what you do.
So I'm a psychologist. My main interest, I work in Manchester Metropolitan now, so I do a bit of everything. But before going to Manchester Metropolitan, my main interest was in brain injury and rehabilitation, that side of things. But it's kind of evolved now, and I'm interested in performance, and I'm interested in how the groups we belong to impact how we get along. And the thing with the bikes is I get an awful lot of help from an awful lot of people. And it's funny because I was doing a class yesterday on performance and the groups around us, the teams. Because the thing I find very interesting about the bikes is even though it's an individual sport, it's kind of not. You need a huge amount of people to help you. And I was writing down just to get my head right for the class yesterday, the way I was going to be talking about in inverted commas individual sport. Like there's more than 30 people help me. It's extraordinary. That gets you through things, because when the bike breaks down, when you fall off, when it needs fixing, when there's like, because everyone's pulling in the one direction, everyone is really keen to get you on. And work-wise, I think the insights that I've got from the bikes have really fed into the work, and we're spreading it out a bit. I'm doing a bit of work, the guy called Otto Lappi in Finland, and Sean Moriarty here in the Kerry Motor Club and the rally side of things. And I'm kind of hoping to develop, because there's not a whole lot of research or data on this, I'm starting to pull together a data bank, try and get some performance-oriented research going with regard to motorsport generally, but obviously because I'm biased with a bit of a focus on the bikes.
Do you know, that's fascinating, Stephen, because I think a lot of people, again, we talk about those people who don't necessarily understand what on earth would make somebody want to hurtle themselves around the mountain course here. Trying to get inside that sort of psychology would be absolutely fascinating. But talking about the bonds and the fact, you know, we are social creatures, and actually those bonds in the world of motorsport really do seem so strong. And, you know, there are absolute highs and devastating lows, and the impact of that must be, well, it's really quite something.
Yeah, it really is. And you end up meeting like really great people. Like one of the best people I've met is Barry Wood, who lives over there, your side of things. And like the help that Barry gives people, taking them around the mountain course, showing them things, instructing. I'd say if you added up the amount of his time that he's given back to riders, it's massive. And that's everywhere. I mean, no one took me around for a couple of laps last year. When I fell off the 500, Billy Robry, his dad, Ron, built my engine, but Billy was there as well. He took the front end off from his bike and stuck it on my bike to get me back out again. I mean, really the amount of help you get from people is extraordinary.
It actually makes you feel quite positive about the human nature then.
Yeah, and that's one of the best things about road racing, really, is like the people involved in it. I mean, it's so much fun, but outside of that, and on top of it, the cherry on top is the people involved in it. I mean, it's fantastic, really.
And as you say, I mean, you are on your own when you're out there on whatever track or course you're doing, but you've got that whole team behind you. What have you learned about the competitive nature of motorsport? Because it's not necessarily just about being on the top step, is it? It's about getting out there and reaching your own personal goals.
It is, yeah. Sport is really good fun, but it's way more than that. And I think it's about winning. It's all about winning. But the win isn't necessarily being first. That's not what the win is. I mean, for me, sometimes the win is just to get around without falling off. That's the win. But if you decide, you know, if you're 35th, the win will be finishing 34th next time. So it's about winning, it's about improving, and it's about, I think it all comes down, in my mind, to trying. The thing that I love about all sports, particularly ours, is I love watching people trying hard, and then when it clicks, there's just, it's the trying.
There's a little bit of magic there as well, isn't there? And you just think if everything aligns and all goes well, how amazing. But actually having to endure those hardships, that's probably a win in itself.
Oh, it is, yeah. I actually think things going wrong, when it eventually comes right, and it always comes right eventually, it makes it even better. Because when I get around, part of me, I mean, obviously I'd like to do as well as I can. But when I get that finisher's medal eventually for the Manx, I've got to be happier than people who came home with Olympic medals. I'm going to do a song and dance for a week after it.
I'm going to hold you to that, and we're going to have a microphone standing by, Stephen. In terms of what you've learned about how to get in the best possible headspace then, from a psychology point of view, what would be the best sort of advice you'd have for people?
Oh, I think the biggest thing you can do is think about your thinking. So, for example, if you're going racing, if you have a plan, so say, for example, around the mountain course, there's places that you can take a break. You know, the Mountain Mile, Sulby, where you can catch breath, and you can lower your heart rate when you're on the bike or in a rally car, whatever your sport is, by just breathing out for longer than you breathe in. That's a big thing that's awfully easy to do. And if you're coming up on somebody, where are you going to pass them? If you have a rough plan in your head, it's a bit like when I was doing a session with Sean Moriarty and the rally lads, I was saying to them about Barack Obama. He wears the same suit all the time. He's got like 30 versions of the same suit. And the reason that he does that is that he doesn't have to think about what suit he's going to wear next. And if you think about it, on the bike, the most valuable resource we have is our attention. So if we think about how we're going to apply that attention before we're in the situation of having to apply it, we'll help ourselves a lot. If you can bring the Barack Obama approach to suit wearing to your bike racing, it's a help.
Oh, I love that idea. But yeah, it's just taking one other thing out of the mix.
Yeah, the less you have to think about, the faster you'll go. If you can focus on one thing. So say if you're going into a corner, you can't think about how is your bike going, the competitors around you, and the apex. You can't think about all three at the same time. So if you have a plan in your head roughly, now you can change it, of course, but if you have a plan in your head as to what you're going to be thinking about at a given point in the track, it'll help you.
And Stephen, I mean, you're saying this, and I'm getting the impression, obviously, you're over there in Ireland at the moment, you work in Manchester, you're doing the bikes as well, you've got your wife and so your family life as well. In terms of being able to think about one thing at a time and not be so busy, I'm not sure you're actually living that.
No, I'm the cobbler of shoes. And the other thing, unfortunately for me, I'm a better psychologist than bike racer. I wish I could do some of the things that I'm suggesting.
What is your day-to-day life like then? How much time do you have to spend travelling and how do you fit it all in?
Oh, well, term time, Monday to Friday, I'm in Manchester, home at the weekends. I'm dying to get at the bikes. The bikes are here in the shed. I haven't had a chance to get at them yet because I've been away with work. But hopefully next weekend now I have a chance to get stuck in. And we're going up to Athay. There's a bit of hope that road racing will come back to the south this coming year. And the Athay club, it's our local club here. The AGM is on Sunday night. So up to that on Sunday night to find out what's happening next year. But hopefully it'll be positive.
Oh, we really do hope so. Is your wife into bikes?
Kind of. I think she'll enjoy the racing more when I've stopped.
Are you using some sort of psychological tricks to try and make her enjoy it?
My gosh, if I could, I'd bottle it and I'd retire.
Obviously, everything is cross for you for MGP 2025. Just tell us a little bit about the team you've got around you and how you've gone about with things like sponsorship. How are you finding that?
Oh, well, I'm getting great help. There's a generator company here in Kerry, Short Power, Jamie Masters and Mick Murphy, and they're both bike mad, and they've given me a ton of help last year and this year. George Stinson built the engine for the 350, Ron Robury for the 500, and they're both really good. Dare Rattley, John O'Grady with the dyno, they both give me a ton of help. I just, like I was saying to you earlier on, I get help from everywhere. Brian Mateer, he and Barry Davis, and they both won Manx Grand Prix in the past, and I meet them when we're racing here, and they're two great sources of advice if I've questions about what's going on. So I just have a massive amount of help from everywhere, and please goodness, we'll get the finish this year. Get the entry first, and then get the finish. We'll go over for the pre-TT hopefully, and I'm hoping Barry Wood will have time to take me around for a lap and give me some more advice, because his knowledge around that circuit is awesome, and he's a really great help. So I'm hoping to get another couple of laps in with Barry as well. Oh,
that'd be brilliant. And it's almost like you are spending your holiday time, I'm guessing, here on the Isle of Man. I mean, what better place to be?
Oh, well, 100%, yeah. Yeah, well, we'll knock over, because when we go over pre-TT, we'll get to sit in hedges and watch the first bit of the TT as well, hopefully. And then back for 2 weeks at the end of August, and it looks like it's going to be great this year with the whole Joy Unlock 25 thing and everything that's going on as well.
Yeah, do you know, that sounds like it's going to be quite an emotional event, and especially for you, obviously having grown up and watched him and thinking about how he started out and then really took the road racing world by storm. So to have that reflected and seeing Michael Dunlop out there on one of his machines, that's going to be quite a spectacle.
Yeah, and he's a class act too, Michael, isn't he? It's going to be, I can't wait for it. And it's funny because, put it in context, 25 years ago at the Manx, that's the first time that I was there. Yeah, it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it. And it's one of those things tourists like me find about the Isle of Man is there's all the history that we're interested in. There's little bits of it hiding everywhere in the island. It's nirvana, really.
Oh, you're a great ambassador for the island, Stephen. It's been fascinating talking to you. If anybody wants to keep up to date with your racing, are you out there on social media? Can people follow you?
Yeah.
Where's the best place for them to go?
Oh, maybe Facebook. but I'm easy enough to watch when I'm racing because I don't be going 5 very fast. So yeah, they've plenty of time to have a look.
Oh, Stephen, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. It's been a really fascinating insight, and those little psychological tricks, hopefully somebody listening who's maybe just starting out will find really useful, and every possible bit of luck thrown at you for 2025.
Brilliant. Look, thanks very much indeed.
Stephen Walsh, some brilliant advice there for people about how to get into the right headspace, just breathing out for longer than you breathe in. I think that can work in so many different situations. Every single thing is crossed, Stephen, that you are back over here on the Isle of Man and you get that finish that you really do deserve. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode. I'll put a link to how you can find Stephen on social media so you can follow his progress. This podcast is brought to you by Kawasaki Insurance, and you can find out about how you can get covered by visiting their website. It's kawasaki-insurance.co.uk. And if you'd like to get in touch and be part of the podcast in the future, I would love to hear from you. BethSB@manxradio.com is the best email address. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.